All right. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Trooper Christopher T. Jester. I am a Ohio State Highway Patrolman. I have served as a trooper in Ohio State Highway Patrol for nearly 25 years. I've spent, since 2004, I've been in the Crash and Crime Scene Reconstruction Unit.
All right. And can you please relate to the jury your training and background that's prepared you for your current position?
In 2004, I entered the unit, and since then I've received over 1,000 hours in both crash and crime scene reconstruction. That involves dealing with physics, also with forensic mapping or making scale diagrams, and working different scenes such as either mass fatality, traffic crashes, domestic homicides.
And have you had an occasion to be qualified as an expert witness in the state of Ohio?
Yes.
Do you know approximately how many times?
I would say approximately 5 to 10 in several different counties, from Columbiana to Cuyahoga.
Okay. And, Your Honor, at this time I'd move to have Trooper Jester qualified as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Any questions? None. All right, he'll be considered an expert. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Trooper Jester, at some point this year, you were contacted by the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office and or the Trumbull County Sheriff's Department to do a reconstruction of a crime scene in 2007 at a location in Trumbull County, Ohio. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Would you please relate to the jury what you did and how you made a crime scene reconstruction in reference to a crime scene at 64 West 9th Street, Newton Falls, here in Trumbull County, Ohio?
On 5/24/2018, I received a request from the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office to provide assistance in scene diagramming for the address of 64 West 9th Street. It involved the 2007 homicide scene. There were particularly 3 requests. One was to create an empty scene diagram showing the structure of the house and the scene itself, and to, if possible, add in items that were found inside the photographs to give approximate locations and scale. And the third was, if available, attempt to calculate trajectories from the 2 bullet defects that remained in the floor.
All right. And to reconstruct that crime scene, what did you have to do, and what did you, first of all, what did you review in reconstructing that crime scene?
I was given a copy of the case file provided by the prosecutor's office, also digital photographs, and a crime scene sketch that was taken at the scene.
And at some point, did you yourself go to 64 West 9th Street, Newton Falls, Trumbull County, Ohio?
Yes. On 6/12/2018, I was accompanied by the prosecutor's office investigator. I was also met by the property owner of the house, and we were given a tour of the lower level, stairway, upper level, and basement. I was shown by the prosecutor's investigator where certain events had taken place or items that were found. I was also shown downstairs where 2 bullet defects were present on actually underneath the floor of the living room.
All right. And did you do anything else at that location?
While at that location, I attempted to do some basic trajectory calculations or trajectory work using those 2 bullet defects. There was one that only had 1 hole. After it went through the floor, it struck a joist and then went into the water heater, which is no longer there. The second defect went through the floor and also through an additional support underneath the floor. The property owner advised that those defects had not been messed with or altered in any way. So at that point, I took a trajectory rod, a metal trajectory rod, passed it through the 1 defect that had the 2 holes available to me, passed it through the floor, through the carpet, and then went upstairs and looked. And at face value, it directed the trajectory to the left side of the staircase on its way to the hallway landing. After that, I put a laser pointer on it to see where it would lead me finally, and the laser dot went up to the upstairs master bedroom just to the left of the door. All right.
And did you use any specialized equipment or anything at that point?
After that, I also checked the trajectory downstairs, laser pointer on the bottom of the rod, showing it that the bullet's path or that trajectory would have intersected the east wall. Once that work was done, I began to do what we call a forensic map, or a scale diagram of the scene. I used two pieces of equipment. The first one was a total station, simply survey equipment. It was brought into the home, and I began to measure individual points of interest inside the house, be it the edges of walls, how wide the doorway was, the stairway, and also the one bullet defect that was present, or at least we could see from the carpet. Once that was completed, I took about 54 points of measurement, and what the total station allows me to do is record those points of measurement, and then later on the computer program, create a scale diagram. After that work was done, I brought in a second device, which is a 3D laser scanner. Much like the total station, this 3D laser scanner does send out measurement points, but it sends out millions of them. It simply coats the entire environment with measurement points. And what it allows you to do is see your scene in 3D, and also to measure in 3D. Once that was complete, the work began on the actual report to answer, or to try to answer those three requests.
All right. So essentially what you were measuring, you said, I think if I heard you correctly, you said millions of points were measured?
Yes, that was with the 3D laser scanner.
And what it's measuring are fixed objects that had not changed in the last 11 or 12 years, correct? There would be the walls and the floor. You're not talking about furniture or potted plants or anything like that, right?
It would cover everything inside that environment, but structurally the house remained more or less the same, except there was an addition of a handrail to the upper staircase, and there were some lighting and shelving changes inside the living room. But the basic outline of the rooms and the hallways appeared to remain the same as compared to photographs from 2007.
All right. And that's why you were comfortable performing this type of analysis, correct?
Yes.
One of the reasons.
Yes.
All right. So once you completed that, did you then go back and do any other work outside of the home?
Outside of the physical structure, or
Yeah.
No.
All right. So you had all your measurements, you had your comparison. What did you do then with the information you obtained?
The electronic information, which was the measurements, was used in a computer-aided drafting program. I was able to create a scale diagram of both the living room, foyer, staircase, and upper level, minus the master bedroom.
All right. And the request, and why you were requested to do this in this case, was to do what?
To create a scale diagram for the prosecutor's office, depicting the physical attributes of the actual scene itself, and then with the addition of the photographs, attempt to place in approximate positions items that were found inside or the subject of those photographs.
Okay. And were you able to do that through those programs that you've been trained and worked with previously?
Yes.
Okay. As a result of your work, did you create a report?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to hand you what has been marked for purposes of identification in this court. State's Exhibit number 85. Get these out here. I'm going to hand you a 16-page document that's been marked for purposes of identification as State's Exhibit 85, and ask if you recognize State's Exhibit 85.
Yes.
And what is State's Exhibit 85?
That is the Reconstruction Assistance Summary Report, authored by me and sent to and delivered to the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office.
And does State's Exhibit 85 detail your findings in relation to your crime scene reconstruction of the scene at 64 West 9th Street, Newton Falls, Trumbull County, Ohio?
Yes.
All right. Can you please relate to this jury the findings? And when you're ready, we have what you have marked in your report as or diagram C, D, and I believe E of your report. And when you're comfortable with the court's permission, if you could come down and review those before the jury explain them. Okay? So when you're ready, tell us your findings, and when you're ready to use this, just let us know.
Originally, I began to make 4 diagrams of the scene to depict different phases. The first diagram was simply an empty diagram, much like a blueprint of the house itself. After that, I began to focus on the crime scene or the immediate crime scene, and making several diagrams showing the approximate locations of items found inside the photographs. I've also marked where bullet defects were found in the floor. Those were found either using the total station or extrapolating the measurements that were taken back in 2007 and putting them in the correct places. If I may.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, and just so we're sure for the record and for the jury, this is Exhibit C. The letters in the upper left correspond to the exhibit, to the diagram in your report. Okay, they're just blown up version. Okay. So go ahead and tell us regarding diagram C and explain to the jury what that is.
The diagram C is a scale diagram of the structure of the house to include the upper level, the stairs to the upper level, a portion of the living room, foyer, and steps leading up to it. In addition, there's an item list on the left-hand side showing items that were found in the photographs to include 2 shoes, a water bottle, the victim himself, and also 2 bullet entry points into the floor, marked D and E. D was a single hole, and E was also a single hole that had a secondary hole underneath the floor. Also on the side there is a legend, but the structure itself is scaled. The items inside, such as the victim and other items in the living room, are across the room.
Okay.
Diagram D, which is similar to C, includes the area found before. However, it only involves the living room, the staircase, the victim location, and then the other hallway. I was able to scan and measure 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, 2 closets. Also noted is another item list with items upstairs that were found within those photographs, which include 2 articles of clothing, a tissue box, a bottle, a firearm, and a jig located across the closet door. I also include the doors in their swing directions and attempted to basically show, at the time, the carpeted runner of the steps.
That's no longer there now.
No, correct.
Okay.
Carpeting has been changed. There appear to be no large structural changes to the stairway at all.
Other than you mentioned there was a handrail placed there that was not there in the original photographs, correct?
That's correct. It has been omitted on this diagram to reflect what it was back in 2000.
On March 12th, 2007, or March of 2007. Okay. All right. Continue.
The final diagram is
And just for edification again, that is designated as diagram E.
diagram E, the final diagram made in the report. It also lists and shows evidence regarding the trajectory, horizontal and vertical. It also has a narrative of the bottom and for the legend and the model that we use as confirmation of earlier calculations.
Right. And I see on that diagram in the lower bottom middle is a diagram of an individual appears to be pointing or holding what I assume would be a firearm in the angle that, in general, where you believe the shots were fired from.
Yes.
Right. And that is based upon your measurements and your entire analysis as to the angle that you feel mathematically and the scene proves or shows where the shooter was standing.
Yeah, I can explain on that.
Yeah, and I'd like you to expand on that, please. Are you done with the diagram?
I might go back.
Okay,
to-
I'll leave that there.
to E.
I'll leave that there for you.
Regarding the trajectories themselves, the one thing you have to watch out for is what we call confirmation bias, which is simply just attempting to work something just simply one way and being done with it. In this case, I worked it several different ways, and the first thing I did was with the trajectory rod physically at the scene. When looking at the rod, the horizontal angle of the rod through the living room floor pointed towards the left side of that staircase, angling towards the open hall landing. Secondly, when I put the laser pointer on the rod itself, it shot a beam up to the left side of the master bedroom door at the top of the stairs. To me, that showed that the trajectory did clear the hallway landing. The next thing I did was I treated both defects as if they didn't have second holes, that it was just a single hole. In that case, I'm able to show at least where it's possible to have shot a shot from, no matter what the angle, into those bullet holes. On the diagram itself for defect D, concerning the staircase, there's a green line that shows where it's possible to have fired a round into that hole, given that direction. We do know that the shots went from the west to the east after entering the floor. From those three things, I then attempted to calculate a vertical trajectory. In other words, could the actual trajectory or the angle of that trajectory actually exceed the hallway floor? Would it go over just like the laser dot did? Using a little bit of trigonometry, mathematically it showed that it was possible for that trajectory to clear the hallway floor, at least by a foot. Well, I believe it's 1.13 feet. In addition to that, once I found that the trajectory mathematically cleared and using the laser pointer cleared, I used a second procedure, which I didn't use any math at all. I used simple geometry, where I built a scale diagram of the floor of the upstairs hallway, the steps themselves, and I've used the model of the defendant, 5'2", with the arms outreached to match that trajectory down into the floor. Using that model, I found that when I attached that model to the trajectory, the only place it really fit upstairs was in that yellow shaded area on the hallway. As I brought the model down, however, it's also possible for that model to be on the floor roughly around anywhere from the first to second step of that stairway. So in this case, the probable firing areas for this trajectory, which is only the one from E, the one bullet defect, would be either that we found on the hallway itself, on that landing, or possibly from the second or first step of the stairway leading up to...
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you talk about the second or first step, are you talking about the second or first step from the...
From the living room floor.
From the living room lamp, okay.
Yes.
All right. So there's basically a gap that it's either at the top of those steps or the first or second step.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but continue.
When the straight line trajectory is shown through there, if it was on the first or second steps, the firearm would have to be pulled relatively close to the right, to the left side of that stairway as you looked at it.
Okay. And that was regarding both? Well, that's just regarding E, correct?
That's only regarding E. D did not have a second defect, so we couldn't get a straight line trajectory, but we did show an area in which it would be possible to get a projectile into that hole.
All right. And that basically was the extent of what you were able to conduct at this crime scene reconstruction, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And as I previously mentioned, you have testified to these diagrams, which are in your 16-page report that we have marked as State's Exhibit 85. State's Exhibit 85 is a fair and accurate copy of your report?
Yes.
All right. And it contains the diagrams that you have testified here today, as well as some other information that you've testified to, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions for Trooper Jester. I'm sure the defense will have some questions for you, sir.
Mr. Russo, do you want the diagrams back?
Yeah, do you want
The
to
diagrams?
No, Judge, do you want me here or you want me to move this?
You can go ahead.
Is this fine? How you doing, Sheriff?
Good.
My name is David Russo. Claudia, I just want to ask you a couple questions. I guess first, as I listened to you testify, I heard a lot of words like attempt, probable, possible, probability, that sort of thing. You also said that the scene was not altered in any way. I'm curious how you would know that from 11 or 12 years that have gone by from the original date of this shooting.
Regarding the scene or the defect,
Either.
I was told by the property owner.
How long have they lived there?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So the state, as far as you know, you received no chain of custody in terms of those two holes that you analyzed in the scene in general that have been in police custody and preserved for 12 years, correct?
No, didn't receive that.
Okay. Do you know, and obviously you know the shooting that we're here for occurred in 2007, correct?
Yes.
Do you know that property was sold and transferred in 2009?
Not the exact date.
Do you know it was sold again in 2009?
No.
How about 2011?
No.
Again in 2011?
No.
2012?
No.
2017?
No.
Okay. So the people that now own it, do you know their names?
Not offhand, no.
Gaydosh sound familiar?
Yes.
Do you know when they bought it?
No.
That would be April of 2017. Does that sound accurate to you? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, so it's your testimony that these holes in the scene in general have not been altered. You don't really know that, isn't that true?
In relation to the photographs I was given, they do not appear to be altered, but I don't know if they have during that course.
Okay. And you testified a few seconds ago that according to the current homeowner, the holes in the ground hadn't been tampered with, correct?
Yes.
And if they bought the house in April 2017, that would be the only time they had knowledge of that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know how many times the carpet was changed in that house?
No.
Did you happen to read or examine or read the coroner's reports in this case
Yes.
prior to this?
During the investigation, not before.
Well, you said you relied on the case file and photos,
Yes.
crime scene sketch.
Yes.
Did the case file include the coroner reports,
Yes.
Dr. Philo's report? Do you
That-
recall?
I believe so.
And you read that report?
So that's from the Cuyahoga County the forensic pathologist.
Yes, sir.
I believe his report came in after mine.
Okay. It came in before you came up with this?
I believe it came afterwards.
Okay. How about Dr. Germanic's report?
Yeah, I've read his report.
And you read that before you did this?
It was during the same time.
Okay. And do you know if back in 2007 someone else tried to do what you're doing here at the scene?
I know there were photographs of strings being used showing the area.
Okay, and there were rods through the floor, correct?
There were wires, yes.
And it's safe to assume that if there was any modification of those holes between 2007 and the time you did this, your measurements are off. Isn't that true?
That could be correct, yes.
Okay. Any modification whatsoever would change the angle of everything you've come up here with today.
If there were substantial modifications, yes.
1 degree.
1 degree vertically, 1 degree, well, you could range between 4 degrees vertically. Between 44 and 45 degrees, they would still go in the same vertical direction. I didn't see any evidence horizontally that it was going to change.
Say that again.
We have two, on E, there's 2 specific defects
Okay.
that are rounded that the rod went through. I didn't see any large pieces of the wood missing as far as, or any other circular defects on there.
So you didn't notice a change in them from when?
I didn't, when I examined it, there was a curved area on that second, and I didn't see any other curved area where a projectile would have passed through.
Okay. You didn't see them in 2007, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't see them at any time up until June 12th of this year.
That's correct.
So you have no idea of the condition and any changes they've been up until
I can only go by the photographs.
Okay. And I'm not sure if I understood your testimony about the bottom step and the top step or somewhere. What were you trying to explain at that point?
The trajectory lends itself to either being fired from the top of the hallway, the landing, or it could be possible to fire it from the second step. The second step up from the living room floor. It still follows that same trajectory.
You're saying that's where the shooting occurred?
It's possible that the bullet could have been fired from that second step or released from the hallway landing.
Okay. You also mentioned that something you used gathered millions of bits of data. I assume that's a laser bouncing off the walls and that sort of thing. Is that what
Yes.
that is? And they reflect back, or they're just measured? How does that work?
The 3D laser scanner actually sends waves of laser energy out to the environment and is bounced back at a certain frequency.
Okay.
And then the laser scanner can determine where those points of measurements are in relation to itself.
Okay, that kind of makes sense to me. And when you set all that equipment up and cast all these things out against the walls, was there a body on the floor?
No.
Was Carl Hoerig's body on the floor?
No.
Okay. The software that you use to gather that information, what is it called?
It's called Crash Zone, other known as CAD Zone, and also the Scene from Faro, Scene
Oh,
software.
sorry. I'm having a hard time pushing back towards me. I don't know if you can move.
I'll do whatever you need me to do. Want me to drive
I'm
over
just
here?
talking to you and I can't.
Try not to hurt myself. It's got yelled at earlier. Got it. You're welcome. I'm sorry, Trooper, I asked you about the software that you use in this.
The software is called CAD Zone, which is what makes that diagram behind you. And then for the 3D laser scanner, it's called Scene.
Called what?
Scene, S-C-E-N-E.
Okay. And how long have you been using this software?
Been using CAD Zone likely since 2006, and Scene since likely 2013 or 14.
Okay. And that software, is that something you maintain and update? Or is that something someone else do that for you?
It's updated. There's several versions of it.
What version are you on now, do you know?
We're on 10.
Just
And
10?
Just 10. Actually 10.6, I believe. That's the last version that's being supported.
Is that the CAD zone or the 3D?
That's the CAD Zone.
What about 3D?
3D, it's, I believe it is 5.1 or 3.
And when were those updated?
The update on the Scene, it's been a while. It's maintained. It's simply a processing software for the laser scanner.
Okay. And that's software you license, or your OSP license?
Yes.
Licenses? Okay. What about the hardware that you set up in that room? Is it calibrated? How old is it? That sort of thing?
The Trimble S5 came into service, which is the total station. That came into service in 2016.
Okay.
And it was from the factory, and we end up recalibrating those every 2 years.
Okay. And those run on a computer?
Yes.
Both of them?
Both of them have a computer inside of them. The 3D laser scanner is a standalone unit.
Okay.
The total station has a handheld computer with it.
Does that standalone unit have like an interface with the computer, such as a USB or anything?
Yes, has an SD card and a USB.
Okay. So it records the data, saves it to an SD card, and then you plug it into a computer.
Yes.
And what computer are you plugging that into? What operating system is that running?
It's a Dell, I believe it's a 5600, and running Windows 7, I believe.
Windows 7?
I think.
Okay, and that when you created all this and you took all these measurements, Windows 7 at that point was updated, as far as you know?
Yes.
Okay, how about the other one?
It was run off the same computer.
Okay, so you're running all this high-tech stuff off of a Windows 7 machine?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what version of Microsoft is up to now?
I believe 10.
Okay. And when you first took the stand, you said that you were called out to attempt to calculate this trajectory, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you weren't there, right? I mean, to see any of the actual events that occurred here.
No.
Okay. This here, this photograph or this diagram of the shooter as you describe it, how do you come up with that?
That's actually on the software itself. The height is determined by the information given by the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office of a height, and then the model can be articulated. It gives an approximate firing stance, although the firing stance can change.
It can or can't?
Can.
So your whole model assumes this?
Yes.
What if it's like this? Like this? Does that change any of your calculations?
It doesn't really change the calculations itself because we're dealing with bullet release height. But the only check that was used in was to check the math, which was it's a geometric check where we begin from one side of the staircase and move the model over to see where it fits. And in this case, it does fit on the hallway or that second or first step.
Okay. So you create these little models of our shooter at a particular angle, correct?
Yes.
And then you create this image here, and we just kind of slide her around so everything jives up. Is that what you're saying? To get your probability zone?
We attach it to the trajectory from E, and I move it aside and see where the model actually touches the floor.
Okay. But you actually do move her around to try to manipulate where you think that the possible trajectory zone or range of place she could have fired is from?
Well, if we run the 44-degree trajectory up the stairs and attach that model to it, the model does not touch the ground at the top of the stairs. However, if I were to move the model forward along that trajectory to the level of the top of the stairs, it's still suspended in the air. Moving the trajectory where it actually goes over to the hallway, the model does slide on top of that hallway. When I move the model down forward along that trajectory, maintaining that same stance and line, the model does come in contact with either the second, third, or first step.
And that's all based on that particular angle?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take any measurements as to the wounds to Mr. Hoerig?
No, I did not.
So these, based on what you have here, please correct me if I'm wrong, because it's my first time encountering this type of evidence. Based on our trajectory, if he's here, he could have been on the ground and maybe shot as well, right? In the shoulder or the back, perhaps?
I can't testify to that, only to those two defects that I have in the floor. I can't testify to any of the victim's wounds.
Okay. So your complete analysis stems from these 2 points?
Yes.
Correct? So if they're over the 12 years, the 11 or 12 years that have gone by since this shooting and the time you went into that basement, if any modifications occurred to these 2 points, this whole thing means nothing, correct?
Well, the first point D was based off measurements taken back in 2007. That defect was not measured too. So I used the same measurements they used back in 2007 to place that point there.
What about E?
E, if it did change, there would be some discrepancy in there, but we don't have any evidence that it did.
Well, you don't know. You just testified that you couldn't possibly know that except from June. I mean, you never saw it from 2007 until June of this year, right?
That's correct.
So you have no idea if it changed. True?
That'd be true as far as the characteristics of the hole, but it still appeared to be the same as if in the photographs.
Well, it's a pretty simple question. If you never saw the hole in the floor until June of this year, you had no idea what it looked like for the last 12 years, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So when you say that D, you took measurements, were those measurements from the floor with like a tape measure? Or?
The measurements replacing D or from D that you see here?
Well, I don't want to misspeak, but I thought you said that the measurements you used on D were from the investigation in 2007.
Yes, I extrapolated their measurements into the scale diagram and measured from the landmarks they used to position D.
And are those just tape measurements, do you know, or are those rods with lasers, do you know?
I believe theirs were tape measurements.
So not a rod with a laser in D?
Not that I know of.
But you used a rod and a laser, didn't you?
I used a rod in E.
To come up with this? In D or E?
In E. I used it in E. I did not use it in D.
Okay. Can I have a moment, Judge? Just one more. Trooper, you don't know, well, the shooter, you say 5'2" is your assumption?
That's what was on the, in the report that the prosecutor provided for me.
Okay, and again, if this particular shooter, so for all of your math to line up, she's got to be 5'2" and at this particular angle that you demonstrate here, correct?
Reasonably so, yes.
What if she's wearing high heels?
That would change.
Everything?
It would change the vertical, or actually where the person would be placed.
Change a lot, wouldn't it?
Only the vertical trajectory.
Okay, what if she's had her knees bent a little bit? That would change it as well, wouldn't it?
On the vertical, yes.
Moving around?
Moving around would be a change in the horizontal trajectory.
Okay. That's all I have to learn.
Pretty right.
I have nothing, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down, thank you. Statement called, statement witness.
Your Honor, can we approach?
You may. We don't have, our next witness wasn't scheduled until 1. So ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to take our luncheon break early, and we'll take it until 1 o'clock. So go out, have lunch, and then report back down to the pettit jury room to not discuss this case among yourselves nor with anyone else without formal express.
Thank you.